Okay, so here's one of the hardest things for a designer to do when they're doing this kind of coding is to get something they like and then have to like throw it away and start again. But that's really typical with development, and in many cases, it's not throwing all that much away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of our cuboids by length because they're really no longer serving us properly. So I'll just remove them. And there's a lot of things we don't need to see any longer. We know the lines exist. We know we have the dimensions of our tiles. So we could actually go ahead and shut off some of these things so we don't actually have to look at them. Um, so I'll leave the NURBS curve showing. I'll get rid of this by right-clicking on it and turning the preview off. And everything disappeared, which makes no sense. Oh, well, it's actually not calculating. Let me put that back on again. That's actually doesn't seem to be responding properly. I'm not sure why we've lost our top grid. Let me see if we hit points by coordinate. I turn the preview off, turn the preview back on again. See, there's a little bit of a screwiness about the way we're getting our displays, but we're not going to actually let that bother us for now because we're going to be moving on to other tasks. So what we want to do is we want to make rectangles around these points. We know we have these lengths from the distance from our invisible NURBS curve now and these points. So we have the data we need. Now we just need to create some kind of a controllable ceiling tile system. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a rectangle. And we're going to use a rectangle that has a starting point. And we could assign it a plane, or we could use a coordinate system. And I'm going to use the, and you see how that just popped down when I selected something else again. So, and that's because this thing is rerunning all the time. Maybe I should stop for a minute. When we get to really complex calculations many times, it might behoove you to go to manual calculating, which means that the program doesn't run unless you hit the run button. But right now, this is a really lightweight project that we're doing, so we can let that automatically run all the time. So we have this idea of a rectangle now placed here based on a coordinate system. It's assuming the first coordinate system is the origin. But what we really want to do is take all of the coordinate systems of each one of these individual points and make them into rectangles. So we need to figure out how to take a coordinate system point and convert it to a coordinate system. So I'm going to go CS and see if something shows up here. Coordinate system with an input of a point. So if we take our points, which are our tiles over here, let me just zoom out a little bit. Bear with me, we're going to plug this origin in, and we're going to get a coordinate system out. It should actually be visualizing, but it doesn't happen inside of. So what's happened now, and this is one of the disappointing points about not working in 3D, and I'm going to just change this over so you can see what you should be seeing if Revit was working, or excuse me, Dynamo was working properly. Now we have all of these highlighted coordinate systems up here. So that's what I just added. That green and red line is the three-dimensional coordinate system. But we don't have that view available to us, at least if you're going through this series of videos. So I'm going to turn it back off again. But we know we have those coordinate systems now assigned to those points. And if I feed those into our rectangle definition, we're going to get a bunch of rectangles now. And so we're moving to the idea now that we can now extrude these as long as we figure out the kind of right tools to use. We can also control the size of the tiles. For instance, right now they're just 1 by 1. We know we're on a 2 foot by 2 foot grid. So one of the things we could do is actually create a number that we can adjust. And I'll put in 2 just to show you for demonstration purposes. Let me zoom in here. And we'll put that in for the width. You notice how they're each touching each other. And the length. And now we have our tight little grid of ceiling tiles. But if they touch each other, they're going to look like solid masses. So I'm going to put 1.9 in here. Oops. So now they have a little over 1 inch gap between them. So now we have a rectangle that we now need to extrude into a tile so that we could add textures and create a ceiling system. So what we want to do is we want to actually thicken these ideas of rectangles. And there's a couple of techniques that we need to go through in order to make everything work right. Right now, this is just defined as a surface. It doesn't have a solidness to it. So we need to create a solid out of it. So we're going to use what's called surface by patch. So I'm going to feed the rectangle into it. And we're now going to get a surface. I can't show you that on this screen because it's not a solid object yet, but I can go to the 3D view and I'll show you how that's solid. And if I unhook this, you'll see how it's unsolid and solid. So you just have to really kind of take my word on that one, that that's what it's doing if you don't have that view. And I'm going to just turn this back off again. And now we have a surface, we can thicken it. So I'm going to look for, and I don't know where this is in the, I'm going to type in thicken, and I want to be able to thicken it and control which side it grows on. So I'm going to go thicken. It says both sides, but it allows you to turn off both sides so you have control over it. And I think it's cool because we use a Boolean, what's called a Boolean operator. So I'm going to feed the surface into that. And you'll notice now how it gets thicker. And if I zoom in here, you'll see it's going up and down. And that's because both sides is selected because the Boolean operator, the true or false, is set for true. But if we look for a Boolean operator, let's see where that might be. It should be in probably math, logic, no, operator. I'm not finding it quickly. So what I'll do is I'll just type it in. I could type it up here also. Boolean, and it allows us to select true and false. It's set for true right now, so if I hook it up, it'll not change. And if I switch it to false, it'll just go up. And if we want that to be negative, we just need to convert that thickness value to a negative value. So let's go ahead now and actually change all the lengths of them because we can control that thickness. Right now it's set for 1, but if we take our continuously variable system, we can. So when we put our thickness, it goes up. We can make that a negative number just by flipping this value around here, this absolute value. So if I put, let's try this, negative of everything in the parentheses, that now changes all our values to negative, and now our ceiling tiles are moving down. So now we've actually done most of the geometry creation that we need. The next things we need to look at are how to import this geometry into Revit, give it textures, hide the things we want, and prepare it to fit into our project.